Over the last month or so, I've been doing website reviews on business websites, some small business websites, some not, but primarily just looking at the hero sections to see what changes that we can make to the structure, design, usability changes, copy changes, and ultimately how that would overall impact the conversion on that website. But today, what I would like to do is look at a full home page of a website. This should give us a greater opportunity to look at the entire picture of that page, how everything works together, how it all flows, and whether there's any improvements that could be made to improve the visitor's experience. Now, I would like to preface this by saying that I haven't personally communicated with this company, and therefore I'm not deeply familiar with their marketing, the strategy, their business in general, and everything that has led up to the point of this website and where it is today. I'm also not trying to step on anyone's toes here. I'm not saying there's anything particularly right or wrong about the website. I'm not saying anything is better or worse. This is purely educational exercise for myself and hopefully for anyone who is watching, where I can just look at a website and see what improvements and suggestions that I would make with, of course, in this case, my very limited knowledge of the business and their strategy. So with all of that out of the way, let's jump in and take a look. So we'll come over here, and today we're looking at Swali Construction. They provide asphalt and paving services all along the southeast of Queensland, so basically from the Gold Coast through to Brisbane and up to the Sunshine Coast. I'm going to go through each section on the homepage, section by section, and we'll talk about that in turn. So the first section that we're going to start with, obviously, is the header section, which is a fairly standard, fairly basic and traditional header section. Logo on the left, menu on the right. However, I would say that this header section doesn't really have any presence, and what I mean by that is it doesn't really stand out. You could almost load up the page and not even see it and just scroll straight past it. And I think there's a few reasons of why that is. The first one is the typography choice, this sort of thin font that is all italicized. There's also no call to action in the header section. It just kind of also blends in with this hero section underneath, where you've got this big dominating brown image. It kind of takes away from the header section, so you don't really see it. There are some usability issues. For example, there's no drop-down indicators because we have a paving mega menu here and service areas a little drop-down here, but there's no indication that these are actually drop-down, so that is a bit of a usability issue that we would need to take care of. And there's no call to action or anything in here as well. It's just a few basic text links. We'll jump down to the hero section, which I found very strange because you've just got this big brown, honestly quite uninspiring background image, and no content on the top of it. It serves basically no purpose, which is very strange. It looks like there's meant to be content there, and so what I actually jumped in and I just opened up the inspector to see maybe there is content there, and for some reason it's hidden. There is a whole bunch of divs, which is just, I think it's, by the looks of it, it's using Visual Composer, so that's just, comes with the territory. But there do appear to be some wrapper divs here, which look like they used to have some content in it, potentially. So then I thought, okay, let's jump over to the Wayback Machine, and I went back a few years to 2023, and sure enough, we have a different background image, but there is content. There's a heading and there's a button. So I'm not sure what has happened for this to get to the point where there's no content. Maybe it's a mistake, an accident, or they had some reason to remove that content from the hero section, but it's really doing the page a disservice when you start off with a header section which doesn't really do much, a big brown image and nothing else. It's not really encouraging the user to continue scrolling, so that's something we definitely need to fix up. If we scroll down, we come to what's basically an about section. Visually, again, very uninspiring. You've got this basically black background with white text and a button on it. The content is also 100% width of the website's container, which isn't good for readability. Ideally, you don't want content to go any wider than, I'd say, 50 to 70 characters, because when it goes beyond that point, it's just a lot of head moving. It's really hard to continue to read and then jump down to the next line. So you do want to keep the content to around that 50 to 70 character length. In terms of the copy itself, big red flag when I see welcome to. We don't ever want to start off, especially on a home page. Basically, the first words on this entire home page is welcome to Swiley Road Construction. You're not there to welcome people, you're there to tell them what you do and how you can solve their problems. So the copy is definitely something that would need to be revisited. But overall, this whole section does need a bit of an overhaul. I also don't like that it's the first section on the page after the hero section, if you could even call this a hero section. I wouldn't go from hero section then next onto the about section. Again, and because a lot of this copy is me, it's focused on Swiley, who they are, how great they are, Swiley this, Swiley that. You're not putting any focus on the user, the visitor, the client, the customer who is coming to the website, obviously to get a solution to their problem. So that's lots of things here that need to be changed that I think we could definitely improve on. Alright, the next section, if we scroll down, is a fairly standard section with 3 cards. This is basically a services section because we have the 3 industries that they service: residential, commercial, and industrial, and these lead through to those individual service pages. There's no introductory text or anything, there's no heading or any kind of context around this section. It's just bang, here's 3 cards which lead through to our services. So that can work in some cases. In this case, I don't think it works, particularly with everything that's come before it, with the blank hero section, with a big overwhelming about section that focuses almost nothing on the customer, and then we come down to this section with no context, just 3 cards. There is also a strange thing here where industrial paving, residential paving leads through to that overarching service page, so does commercial paving. Industrial paving leads through to service areas. So I don't know if there's meant to be an industrial paving page on the website. There's been a miscommunication again there. But that's something where just the general content and information architecture really needs to be looked at to make sure that everything is flowing well. And another issue I found when I clicked on that and came to service areas, if I want to go back to the home page, so I click the back button, it's just a white page, and that's because of these fancy page transitions that they're doing. When you try and go back a page, it's basically broken, so that's something that needs to be fixed as well. Alright, the next section underneath there is a testimonial section. So we have a testimonial slider, and it's pretty standard, pretty straightforward. One thing that stands out immediately for me is, again, more of these sort of brown black colors, and then this suddenly big bang bold primary brand color. However, the testimonials themselves are very the content size, we can see this is a little one and then we've got a giant one. It really makes this section feel unbalanced, and when you have giant testimonials, it also makes this section really big. And again, there's no context around this section. There's no heading or introduction or anything to this section. It's just bang, here's some testimonials, here's some giant ones, here's some little ones. So there's definitely some tweaks and changes that could be made to this section as well. Now the final section on the home page that comes before the footer is another services section. So I would consider this to basically be a services section because it leads through to those service pages. And then we have another services section, so that doesn't really make sense to me, especially because of what we have in this section. We have an accordion with 5 services, and when you open up one of them, there's a little bit of information about that service, but that's it. There's no link through to that individual service page, there's no call to action through to the contact page or to get a quote. It's just a heading and a little bit of information on each of these. And another strange thing is that some of these services, for example Flowcon, I believe, isn't actually a service on their website on the service page. So if we go up here to their paving services, Flowcon is not a service here, and I couldn't find it anywhere else. So it's just a bit strange why they're highlighting these particular services. Maybe these are featured services they want to highlight, but there really does need to be some more thought put behind how they structure each of the services and the sub-services on the page, on the website in general, and then really nail down how to approach that. And the last section is just the footer, which is a pretty standard footer. We've got a logo, some contact information, and some links, some navigation links, and some service area links. I'll probably do a little bit of tweaking to the content in this section, but overall it'll just be a tidying it up and making it work with the rest of the design. Okay, so now we've had a look at the existing website. I've gone ahead and I've jumped into a design, into Figma, and I've put together a bit of a design. using pretty much the content that's on this page, but just restructuring it, redesigning it, making it work and flow a little bit better. So let's jump over and take a look at that. So first we'll take a look at the header section up the top here. I've tightened it up a little bit. I've actually brought all that content inside of the main site container. On the current website, it's outside the site container, so no matter what width you're looking at on a browser, the logo will always be as far over to the left and the menu will always be as far over to the right. I've brought that into the main site container on the website. I've also changed the typography, so I've used a bit more of a bold typography. It has a little bit more character to it. I've added those drop-down carrots, so you can actually tell that these menu items are drop-downs, and I have added a call to action button to their quote page because they do have a standalone quote page with a quote form on it. So I think it's important to highlight that in the header section. Now this section, the hero section below this, we've made these two sections blend together a little bit more seamlessly. It might be hard to see on the video, but there is a very subtle background gradient with the logo icon kind of highlighting it a little bit on the gradient. It is, as I said, it'll probably be hard to see on the video, but if you do go and look at the full design file, you'll probably be able to see it a lot better there. We have actually gone in and added some content to this hero section this time. I've actually taken the main heading that they had a few years ago from the Wayback Machine when we had a look there, and I've just added a little bit of copy here based on some other copy that they had throughout the homepage as well. And we've got some links to their paving services page and their request a quote page again as well. I'm also just put a little bit of an image over here just to show off their nice truck and their branding a little bit. This image is a bit more bright and cheerful than the brown one that's on the current website as well. You can also notice that I've used a combination of sort of cut off corners and rounded corners, just so it's not a completely harsh and sharp design. We've added a bit of rounded as well to make it feel a little bit more friendly. Alright, we'll scroll down. So instead of jumping straight into the About section, instead I've brought that services section back up the top. We're using some little pre-heading tags here, and we're also using just some standard bolding in headlines to highlight the parts of the copy that we want to focus on. And in this case, unlike on the current website, I have added a little heading and introduction section, as well as a button to view all the services. And we can see down here I've got the same three cards that they have on the homepage of the current website. Got residential, commercial and industrial paving. They've changed the design a little bit. I think they stand out a little bit better. On the other website it was kind of hard to read the copy that was overlaid on these cards. I think it's a little bit easier now to read that copy. And we have an example here of one of the cards. What happens when you hover on it, it just adjusts and adds a little bit more content to the card. So we've got that title, and in this case residential paving, we're highlighting these services under residential paving. So under residential they do asphalt paving, driveways, sports courts and so forth, and then the link to take them through to that residential paving page. I just think that works a little bit better to outline the services and the structure of the website. Alright, we'll scroll down to the next sections. Now this next section is basically that About section that on the original page was on the very first section after the hero. I've significantly reduced the amount of copy that's in this section. I've still basically taken it from that section, and I do think that copy does need to be looked at and tweaked to make it more customer-centric, customer-focused. And I've just thrown another nice little photo over here. But if the person, for whatever reason, wants to keep reading about the company, then we just lead them through to the About page. Pretty straightforward. And then directly under here, this is the testimonials area, and it's almost basically a part of the About section. And we can see I've used the same technique with the gradient flowing from one section to the next with that little branding icon, and then that just kind of ties these two sections together. It doesn't feel like you're going bang like on the old website from that big dark About section and then all of a sudden you're into another section, the testimonials section, which is a big bold section. These just flow together a little bit more easy. You can quickly see a testimonial and continue scrolling on. Now the last section we have here, and on the current website, the last section on the home page is that redundant services section, which was a little bit confusing. I've opted to remove that completely because we already have these service cards up the top here, and instead make this a call to action banner. So we've just got some big bold text telling the user what to do. We're highlighting that they can get a complimentary site visit and request a free quote, and we're leading them again through to that quote page. Nice little bit of a design that ties in with their branding. We've got one of their rollers over here, which is pretty cool. So I just think that works a little bit better. You've taken them through the rest of the page, and now you're asking them to take action to go to the quote page. They've had the opportunity to go and view your services. It just makes a bit more sense to have this call to action here instead of a random services section that's honestly a little bit confusing. And then the last section we have is of course the footer. So again, as I said, I didn't change this too much. We've still got the logo. I've just adjusted the general design and layout a little bit. We've still got these contact information, the social media icons, another less prominent quote button down here, which would lead through to the quote page. On the original website, the links were the navigation links, so they were leading to the about page and the contact page. I didn't think those links were very important, not important enough to have in the footer on every single page of the website. So instead what I've done is I've broken down the commercial paving services and the residential paving services. Because there was an actual industrial paving page with the services listed underneath that one on the current website, I didn't add that section, but you could add that section over here. In this case, I've just added the service. I've just kept the service areas section there. Anyway, this links through to all of these different services on the page. This will help. It tells Google and people that all of these links are important, and it's just a quick way for people to find those links to those services as well. And that's basically it. The footer section, fairly unchanged, just kind of tweaked it to make it a little bit, to make the layout match the rest of the website. Well, I hope that was interesting, helpful, educational, maybe even all three. If you have any thoughts or feedback about the design, or maybe there's something that you think you would do differently, I'd love to hear about it. Feel free to leave a comment or get in touch. As I mentioned earlier, you can see the full design over at the website in our blog post, which I'll link in the description. That way you can see it as intended without all of the YouTube video compression that goes on. Thanks for watching if you made it this far, and I'll see you next time.